Hey, 2nd District, State Representative Andrew Barkis here under the dome in beautiful Olympia with another Barkis Breakdown. So I just finished up a final meeting on this year's transportation budget. Today I'm going to be briefing the budget to our caucus, and all this week is budget week. We're rolling out the transport budget. We're going to be doing the operating budget and the capital budget. Lots of numbers, lots of stuff going on here in Olympia. So I spent the last several weeks in what's called the budget cabinet with my counterpart, Representative Fye, who is the chair of the Transportation Committee. I serve as the ranking member, and along with Representative Walsh and Representative Young, my two assistants, we have been working diligently on putting together this year's budget. This year's budget was a challenge because we had the I-976 shortfall of the revenues that didn't come in due to the passing of the initiative, which is a good thing. We had to work with that shortfall to find a way to balance this year's supplemental budget, and we're dealing with a $10 billion budget. And I can happily say that we did that. It was tough, but we did it through prioritizing and sticking to the plan that we laid out here a couple weeks ago for you. We didn't get a chance to implement the policies that we wanted to, of course. We didn't pass the I-976 piece of legislation. We did not pass the sales tax maneuver that we were going to put the revenue in. But we were able to take those priorities and those policy ideas and put them in the process in the negotiation to get to the budget. And the biggest key that we did is we went through project by project every single penny that is being spent in the state of Washington. And what we found is that so many projects are not being completed on time for various reasons, and those dollars were not being spent. So we reappropriated them back into this supplemental budget to be able to cover the shortfalls, to be able to hit the priorities, to take care of maintenance and preservation, our special needs transportation, and many other things. And the other piece is we unpaused the projects that the governor had paused in his plan to deal with the shortfall, which was not a good idea because those projects need to continue, because in the long run it'll be more expensive if they're sitting idle for a long period of time. So the transportation budget's going to be a big deal. I will say this, we do need to consider the revenue situation, and we have put forth a good idea by using the sales tax in the general fund. We just found out with the last budget forecast that the general fund in the state of Washington is now up over $1 billion in additional revenues again. This is the second, third, fourth time, I can't even keep track how many times we've had additional revenue. And before the Democrats can get a hold of it in the majority and spend that money, we need to think about how we can prioritize it. Representative Stokesbury, my counterpart in the Appropriations Committee, came up with a great plan, and he has a piece of legislation that every single Republican signed on to talk about taking some of that sales tax money and applying it towards the transportation budget. We can use existing revenues to deal with some of the shortfalls and also take care of a lot of the issues and needs that the state of Washington has within its transportation infrastructure. Another news, housing policy, still working on a lot of that. This week, the Senate will be hearing my two bills that passed off the floor of the House, one unanimous, one almost unanimous, dealing with infill and working with the GMA and SEPA reform and other things to get the state of Washington building to get after the housing shortage and our housing supply issue. I'm excited to see those pass through the Senate process, pass back over to the House, and get to the governor's desk to be signed into law as two really great pieces of housing legislation to deal with our issue here. Many other things going on this week. We've got about 3 weeks left here under the dome, and it's going to be a tough one. This is when it really gets tough as we get down to the final negotiations. We still have issues within the Second Amendment that we're dealing with, some gun legislation that came back. We call those zombie bills, one that was not brought to the floor of the House but now has reappeared in a different version that we will be fighting just as adamantly and just as vigorously as we did the previous pieces that we saw just a few short weeks ago. So that's about it for another Barkis Breakdown here under the dome in Olympia. I appreciate all the input. Keep in touch with us. Kendra has been swamped with literally thousands and thousands of emails, so you can taper off on those a little bit. No, just kidding. Keep them coming. But the calls are great, the visits are great, and we're going to keep working hard for the people of the 2nd District and the state of Washington all the way through the remainder of this session. Thanks for joining me for this other Barkis Breakdown.